Hello, welcome to this short where we are talking the refusal of service form. ROS form is what we are going to do when we have a patient interaction where they have some sort of injury and or complaint and they do not want assessed, treated, or transported to the hospital. At the very top of the form, you'll see a circle before each of those things: assessment, treatment, and transportation. So you're going to start the form by just marking any of those that apply, and it can be multiple. Moving down to section 1, this is the demographics of the patient, as well as the nature of the call. So we're going to start with the day, the time, where you are at. Often, or not to say often, but you can be in a different location than the patient's address. So just make sure that you're able to distinguish those two things, as well as the incident number. Now, the incident number might not be privy to you in the moment you are filling this out, but just make sure that you get it filled out prior to filing this. Without it, it will not be attached to the run number, and there's really not a point in filling it out. So make sure that you get the incident number on there. We have the reason for the call. Why did the individual call? The photo you see here, it's just a fall. And then we get down to the patient's information: their name, date of birth, how old they are, and where they live. If they do not feel comfortable telling you where they live, just make sure you annotate that in the narrative of your chart. If they are not of age to sign or make a medical decision for themselves, or they're just at this point in their life where they no longer make medical decisions for themselves, make sure you include the guardian's information. And I would, at bare minimum, include their name, relationship, and contact information. So, for example, it doesn't have a phone number on here. I would write that in any of the spaces there, just in the instance that they would need to be contacted for some reason or another. Moving down to section 2. In section 2, this covers understanding if the patient can make legal medical decisions for themselves and to make sure that they are in the correct position to do that. So, the reason that you're filling this out: patient doesn't want transported to the hospital, for example. Well, that's a medical decision. Are they of sound mind to make that decision for themselves? Are they alert and oriented completely? And so let's go through these things one by one here. So in section 2, number 1, as best can be determined, the individual or guardian of the patient does not appear to be under the influence of alcohol or drugs, appears to have a normal mental status, has normal speech, is oriented to person, place, and time. The answer to these things should all be yes. Now, there is a caveat with alcohol specifically. It is not uncommon whatsoever for us to be interacting with a patient who is refusing some type of service, who has had alcohol in their system or admitted to consuming it or whatever it will be. Most of these individuals are completely alert and oriented, and does that mean that I would still mark no? I mean, are they not able to make medical decisions for themselves if they've had one beer at a restaurant and slipped and fell in the parking lot? I don't know if that's appropriate. And so we have talked to Dr. Scott about that, and he is okay with us marking yes, they are alert and oriented in that circumstance, as long as there is no shred of evidence, there's no shadow of a doubt that this patient is alert and oriented. If there's any type of evidence just indicating that they're confused, that they do not understand, that they are not coherent in this circumstance, you're going to mark no. In any of these things in section 2, if you're not certain, mark no. And if the answer to no is no in any of these things, you will contact med control. And what that conversation would essentially look like is you just getting on the radio to the nearest ED facility, informing them of the circumstance, and that telling them that you have an individual who is refusing service, but it may possibly be in a circumstance where they're not able to make legal decisions for themselves due to the above reasons, and inform them of that, and then take the conversation from there and take their guidance. Moving down to section number 2, there is no historical data, symptoms, or signs suggesting of a potentially life-threatening illness or injury. The individual has access to a phone or significant others to help them obtain further care if needed. And the individual has read or has been read to them the statements in section 3 and appears to understand that information. That segues us into section 3, which is entailing the rights that this patient has. And they're initialing yes or no if they understand those things. So emergency personnel have offered an assessment and treatment for my illness and injury and transported me to the hospital for further evaluation and care. I refuse services checked at the top of this form for myself and my ward. I understand that a physician has not evaluated me or my dependent and that serious medical problems may exist which are not immediately apparent and which may result in disability or death. That's some harsh language, guys, but you got to think about, this is real life. That could happen. You get, all right, say that guy slipped in the parking lot and hit the back of his head, and maybe he's on a blood thinner or two, and he's very hypertensive. That's concerning. Maybe he's completely alert and oriented, and he says, you know what, I'll see how I feel tomorrow, and if I don't feel that well, I'll go to the hospital. That's a huge risk. He might not wake up tomorrow. And he is not necessarily, or depending on the individual, they might not be privy to the knowledge base that you have and understand that risk. So educate them on that risk that they are choosing to take. They have a legal right to make that risk, but make sure that you are explaining to them what that means and what that could potentially mean for them. I understand that I may call 911 or an ambulance at any time if I change my mind and decide to be transported to the hospital. I like to paraphrase this and tell them, filling out this form does not bind you to anything. If you change your mind and you want to call, please call us back. I understand that I am assuming full responsibility of continuing medical care for my dependent, ward, or myself. I understand that I have the right to receive medical care at the closest appropriate facility, and I understand by refusing further assessment, care, or transportation to a medical facility, I am releasing TRA, its employees and board of directors, its contractor and their personnel, the Emergency Medical Services Foundation, Inc., the system's medical director, the city of Fort Wayne, Indiana, Allen County, Indiana, and for any claims that may arise in connection with my refusal of service identified herein. And then you're going to have them sign, and you are going to put your name on it as well. If you do not feel comfortable putting your name on this, because you should be giving this patient a copy of this refusal for their own personal records, and you just didn't want them to know who you were for whatever reason, ensure you put your badge number on there. It's some sort of identifier for our department that you were the one filling this out. Also, witness. Make sure you have a witness sign this form. The more objective the witness, the better, or at least someone who is removed from public safety in some way, shape, or form. So a witness, like someone who saw the accident, someone who saw the guy fall, a family member, someone who's not in relation to you, the person filling it out. If you need to use public safety for this, that's okay. It just is better if it is someone else. And then at the very bottom, if we're in a circumstance where the patient or the guardian of the patient verbally refuses services and refuses to sign that form, that's that individual who they just say, I don't want nothing, I'm not reading anything, I'm not signing anything. That's what you're doing here. And make sure that you have a witness to verify that claim and sign it yourself. So that could be an officer, it could be your partner, it could be TRA, it could be someone else who's on scene that saw this whole thing play out, and they say, yeah, I've been listening, and yeah, that guy wanted nothing to do with this. So most of the time people are more than willing to help out there. And again, if you need to utilize public safety, that's completely fine. Hopefully this answers any questions you have about ROS forms. And if you have anything that was not addressed, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk with you about it. Thank you.